Bo Nickal versus Reinier de Ridder. A lot of interesting things in this fight that we could look at. So Bo Nickal, he's been undefeated up until this point. You know, American wrestler, high-level wrestler, multiple-time champion, NCAA champion, so on and so on. Reinier de Ridder, great fighter, great grappler. I believe he's ranked top 13 in the world. So last time Bo Nickal fought, he fought Paul Craig in a fight that I believe Paul Craig actually won. It was a very, it just kind of showed there's a lot of holes in Bo Nickal's game. Bo Nickal got pieced up this fight. He got finished. He got hit with some hard body shots. And to be honest, what I noticed in this fight leading up to it, I had Bo losing because apparently, allegedly, he had some crazy weight cut where he was cutting. He was allegedly cutting from 220 pounds coming in on fight week. You know what I'm saying? So that anytime a fighter comes in that heavy, they're probably going to get cooked. If you're fighting at 185 and you're coming in at 220 fight week, you're probably going to lose, you know, just based on history and based on what I've seen. So let's take a look at this.
I had my flip-flop on.
220.6 fight week, allegedly. So if you're coming in that heavy, like you're compromising yourself so badly going into the fight that if you get hit with anything, your brain is not going to really be able to recover. Reinier de Ridder had an excellent game plan, taking advantage of this and attacking the body, attacking the liver specifically. You know, if you're doing a big, crazy weight cut like that, where you're dehydrating your body, you're not going to be able to recover and take those body shots. You know, I've done big weight cuts. You know, and I've cut actually 220 to 185. I've done that weight cut. And I'll tell you straight up, I damn near almost died in that weight cut. So going into the fight, he's extremely compromised. And we've seen this happen with many fighters. The days of doing these big major weight cuts, I think we're seeing come to an end. It doesn't give you an advantage. It gives you a slight advantage. But when you're fighting higher level fighters, it gives you an advantage in round one. But when you're fighting higher level fighters, it's not going to give you an advantage. And we've seen Alex Pereira, he's never been knocked out in the UFC until he had a big weight cut or major weight cuts when he fought Israel Adesanya. That weight cut played a factor in him getting knocked out by Adesanya, 100%. Your brain is the last thing to rehydrate when you do these weight cuts. You know, and there's been championship level fighters and great fighters who've done these big weight cuts. And the first two that come to my mind are Anthony Johnson, rest in peace, and Johnny Hendricks. Now, Anthony Johnson, incredible fighter, but he fought at 170 and he was cutting so much weight, he was losing the fights at 170. You know, he had some big knockouts at 170, but he ended up losing quite a bit at 170 because he's just cutting too much weight. He went up all the way from 170 to heavyweight, and he was winning. He was fighting World Series of Fighting. I believe he knocked out Andrei Arlovski. He went from 170 pounds to heavyweight, and he was winning at heavyweight. And then he ends up going down to back to 185. But before he went to heavyweight, he actually tried to go to 185, and he missed weight at 185 drastically. And I believe he fought Vitor Belfort. Just off the top of the dome. He fought Vitor Belfort. He missed weight, and he missed weight drastically, and he lost that fight. You know, but then he goes up to heavyweight and he's winning. How is that? You know what I'm saying? Why is that? Because the weight cut does more damage than good. When you're a big dude and when you're losing all that weight, when you're losing too much weight, it just doesn't do you well. Johnny Hendricks is another great example. Johnny Hendricks fought at 170, and there was rumblings that he actually cut from like 220. He's a big dude, you know, and he was winning for a long time, but then he went on a major losing streak, and I can only assume it was because as he continue to age, he kept getting bigger and bigger. That weight cut became harder and harder. He ended up going to 185, but he just was never truly the same. And I believe that weight cut took a lot of years off of his fighting career and ultimately gave him a lot more damage because you're just struggling in these fights. He went from a championship level fighter, a guy who was giving GSP a run for his money, to losing quite a bit, you know. And some people say it's because USADA came in, maybe, but we don't know. You know, ultimately we don't know. We can only speculate. But what we can see is that when these fighters have these big weight cuts, usually it doesn't go well. And when a fighter goes up in weight, usually they win, from what I've seen, you know, betting in MMA and stuff like this. And I wanted to show you guys from UFC 311, actually. These are the fight day weights. Now, specifically, I want to look at Yuri Prohaska's weight. Yuri Prohaska came in and he weighed in at 204 pounds. Now, the fight's at 205, obviously. He came in, weighed in at 204, and then he rehydrate fight day. He was only 208 pounds, and he had an incredible performance, probably the best performance he's ever had. You know, on the opposite end, let's look at Jamal Hill's weight. Jamal Hill weighed in at 205. He came in at 221 the next day, and it did not help him at all in the fight. The extra weight did not help him at all. So that's a prime example, a recent example of how these weight cuts, they don't really help you that much. You know what I'm saying? I believe it's better to be fast and healthy going into a fight, you know, especially when you're fighting a skilled fighter. And sometimes when you're rolling, when you're doing jiu-jitsu, when you're wrestling, and you're fighting somebody who's smaller, it actually can be harder sometimes. It really can, because they can just slip out of things and do things. You know, I think the biggest thing with Bo Nickal, he's pretty new to MMA. You know, he came in the game and, you know, he didn't really do it the traditional route, which makes sense because he's a high-profile guy. But he didn't really learn a lot of the lessons that you need to learn early on in your career. You know what I'm saying? And he's fighting the UFC. And now there's no going back. You know, he was calling out Hamzat. Hamzat will eat him alive. Hamzat will destroy him. You know what I'm saying? So Bo Nickal, he's probably going to, unless he goes up in weight, he's probably going to have a rough go for a while here, you know, because everyone who's ranked is a very, very rough, tough fight. And I don't believe anybody who's ranked right now in the middleweight weight class is really cutting that much weight. You know, Paulo Costa, you could say, cuts a good amount of weight, but he's not cutting from 220. You know, Paulo Costa has actually become a little bit more leaner as the years have gone by. So amazing win from Reinier de Ridder, incredible fighter, very skilled guy. You know, he's definitely a guy to watch out for right now. You know, Reinier de Ridder is probably one of the top prospects right now. I'm very curious. I don't really see him beating Hamzat, but that would be a good matchup because de Ridder is great on the ground, and Hamzat, the ground is his main thing. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If Bo Nickal goes up in weight, goes up to 205, I think he's going to perform way better. And that 205-pound division is pretty open right now. There's not a whole lot of, you know, things going on. The whole division's shooken up. You have Ox Pereira, obviously. You have Ankalaev. But if Bo Nickal goes up to 205, gets a couple big wins, you know, I think it would be better for his career. Me personally, you know. So, you know, weight cutting is whack. Doing these big 30-pound weight cuts is over with. You know, the game has evolved. You know, MMA continues to evolve every day. And I think the biggest evolution we're going to see in the next few years is guys not cutting that much weight. You see Ilia Topuria, he's going up in weight, you know, from 145 to 55, and he's probably going to compete way better. When McGregor went up from 45 to 55 and he didn't do that crazy weight cut, he competed way better, you know. So Bo Nickal, I think he'll bounce back from it, but I think he should go up in weight. Learn to